Hello everyone, so this video is a continuation of my Girl Boss series. Today we are going to talk about 10 ways to get a lot done. So these are my 10 top tips for productivity, and they are a high-level explanation of how I managed to have a full-time job as a lawyer, run two businesses, my jewelry business and my scarf business, plus of course this channel in my spare time, and also teach a course on contract law for one term every year. So I do juggle a lot, and so I've tried to be thoughtful about what tips actually help me versus just other tips that are out there that haven't been of personal use to me. And let's get started. So number one, I would say, is the most important. If you only take one tip away from this video, I think it should be number one or also number 10, is that in order to realize your dreams, you need to set high-level goals, but this is the most important part that most people don't do. You need to divide those high-level goals into small, achievable steps. That is the most important thing. It's how I got through law school, it's how I started a business, and managed to turn nothing into something every time. So what you do is, instead of just having your high-level dreams that you want to achieve, that final product or achievement, you break it down into everything that needs to be done to get there. So your laundry list of steps, which will include big steps and little steps, but it's figuring out what those will be to the extent that you can. Because you will never have a productive day until you have those steps figured out. So you have to have your end goal in mind, and you need to be able to figure out what to do on a daily basis in order to get there. That's really important for productivity because it's the substance of what you're going to be doing. And instead of just being like this really high level goal, this unachievable product that seems so far away, it might even be several years down the line. It took me several years to design my jewelry line and come up with the final design that I was going to launch with. It's figuring out every day what are the things that you're going to need to do it, practicing, making different versions of the product, buying your domain, setting up a website, all of those steps. Unless you have that figured out, you will not be able to be productive. And it's the one thing that I think stops so many people from achieving their goals, is that they have that final idea in mind, but they don't have a plan for how they're going to realize it. Number two is intimately tied with number one, so they really go together, and that is to divide your time. Now, this is what professionals tend to be really good at least the successful ones, and that is why you get so much software that's geared at that in law and in accounting as well. It's called timekeeping software. Yes, it is, of course, a product that is meant to enable billing and so money making and business, but there's also more to it than that, which is that if you are accountable for your time, so you're accounting for every minute of the day, there's something that you're doing, you're able to explain what that is. Every 15 to 30 minutes, you should have a small goal that you're trying to reach. So for example, getting photos to look a certain way on the site, or editing something. If you're working on a report, getting some proofreading done for a certain number of pages or a certain section of the report instead of the whole thing, instead of just reviewing the entire thing and having that set as a goal, that is going to be so much more productive. You may find that unnecessarily stressful, and I don't want this to be a source of stress for you, but for me, if I know that at the end of those 15 minutes I have to drop that task like a hot potato and be moving on to something else, that is going to make that time so much more relatively full of productivity than if I had just not timed it at all. I had no idea how long I was spending on it. That's how you lose track of time, and time gets away from you. You hear that a lot in business even, or from professionals, that they just lose track of time. They just don't know where the time went, and it's like you lose a whole day just kind of running in circles and not really figuring anything out because you're continuously just working on the same thing without getting to a resolution. One of the solutions to that problem is to set a time limit. The idea here is that limited time is more productive time. Time is a relative thing, so 15 minutes that is full of really just effective time management where you're really working hard on something, versus 15 minutes where you are not really watching the clock, you don't really have a specific end goal in mind. It's the same amount of time, but totally different result. How do you do that? For 1 and 2, the way that I deal with it is I write it down. Okay, so I have used lots of different ways to do this over the years. There's a lot of software out there that is geared towards that. So if you're approaching this video from more of a professional standpoint, if you're in a professional field, then you may want to consider one of those options. But assuming that, for example, you might be studying, starting a small business, or you're not really into the techie side of things, there's nothing wrong with being old school here and just having a notebook or an agenda, or a combination of timekeeping like an Outlook calendar and notes. I still am a really big fan of Post-its. I always have a little Post-it pad on the back of my agenda here. And what I do, if I just look at this particular, kind of tangible thing and how I use it in order to achieve that number 3 of writing everything down, I use it 2 ways. So I have the high-level goals that are diarized in terms of dates. That's like something like finishing a video and getting it up on a certain date. I have a running list of videos that I know I want to produce for my channel. And then how do I make that happen? Well, within those dates, I'll set smaller goals like film the video, edit the video, and then using Post-its or notes in a notebook, I will break that down even further and include, for example, some of the things that I'd like to mention, current favorites that I'm really loving, things that I am excited to share with you, like different books that I've been reading. Makes it real, it makes it doable, and it makes it achievable. So it's very important because I think once you pull things out of your mind and make them real, that's when you're able to actually turn those written words then into a tangible, substantial product that's real that you can do something with. Very, very important. You have to be able to prioritize. And this can be very tricky. This is something I'm always working on because I have so many balls in the air. What that means is something that's always a moving target for me. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't know what my priorities are, though. Every day I start off and I have priorities at work in my full-time job as soon as I hit the office, and I always take a few minutes to decide what that's going to be. With your free time that's left over once those external goals have been met, what are you going to do with that time? What are you going to do with your evenings, with your weekends? Of course, it's important to take time off for yourself, but in what ways can you also use that time off to achieve some of your personal goals? It can be different for every person, but if you're watching this video, you probably know what yours are. You just need to find a way to make them happen and how to prioritize them. And the only way to do that is to figure out what your other priorities are that you have no choice but to get done. The things that are involved in your full-time job, in your family life, all of those things need to be front and center. Hopefully, once you realize what those are that really need doing this week, this month, you're also able to figure out what are you going to do with the rest of your time? How are you going to fulfill yourself personally? And you're never going to be able to do that unless you're able to prioritize. So I think doing that in the morning is a really good thing that helps for a lot of people, including myself. You can also do it in the evening. It's up to you to find out where that's going to fit into your day. And part and parcel with that is also being able to have a clear mind for that. And that also is going to be different for every person. A lot of people find exercising, meditation, just taking some time to read and just be silent or listen to music. Everybody has a different way of being in that space where they're able to prioritize. So you need to find personally what that's going to be for you. Number 5, if you reacted to number 4 with the idea that maybe you don't have the ability to have that extra time because you have so many priorities, family-wise, work-wise, that there's nothing left over, then maybe number 5 will help you. Sometimes, if you look at your day consistently, how they tend to sort of play out, you can find new time that you didn't know you have. So, for example, that could be something like in between getting home from work and making dinner, there's usually maybe a bit of a gap. How are you going to use that time? Is there something that you could get done that will lead you to your goals that you could get done during that 1 hour, half an hour, or something like that? I want you to avoid going to sleep later because your sleep is very important in order for you to be at all productive. So try not to cut into that too much. But if you're going to bed earlier and not really getting anything done, like for example, you're watching TV for an hour in bed every night, you could be using that time to achieve some of your goals as well. What I find useful is that I find that oftentimes you have these kind of snippets of time that are just wasted throughout the day. So it's not even at the beginning of the day, and it's not at the end of the day either. It's in between. Lunch times is an example that most people tend to just do nothing with. They don't get anything done productively, and they may not even use it socially. It's just kind of a wasted hour. that's time that you could use to achieve your goals as well. Sometimes when I'm really pressed for time, although I personally try and avoid doing this, you also can set the clock earlier. So that's how a lot of people achieve their fitness goals, is to get up an hour earlier every day, even if that means going to sleep earlier, because that's going to be a productive hour for them where they can clear their head, get some exercise, and get that goal in. I try and avoid doing that all the time because I'm already getting up pretty early to go to work, so I do need my sleep, and I don't always do that. But if I'm very pressed for time, like for example in December I tend to be really busy, that is something that I might consider doing, is just setting the clock an hour earlier. And you'll be surprised if you kind of make that sacrifice how much you'll be able to get done in that hour as well, because you've already delineated that for yourself as a chunk of time that you're kind of making a sacrifice to get. And so hopefully that also means you will use it wisely. There are so many chunks of time, and if you just as an experiment start looking for them, you're gonna find so many times that you're lining up, times that you're waiting, time spent commuting if you're taking a train or a bus or something like that. Those are chunks of time that are available to you in order to achieve some of your goals. So for number 6, you might be a little bit surprised. All of this sounds fairly military, fairly precise. It involves, kind of analytical observation of your day, goal setting, timekeeping. All of those may seem somewhat unappealing. But number 6 is a little bit deceptively different, but still fits that mold of helping you to achieve your goals. You won't be surprised when I say that if you do what you feel like doing, you will tend to be more efficient at it. It just makes sense, doesn't it? When we're doing tasks that we don't want to do, we're sort of feeling reluctant. Even that word reluctant, it just evokes slowing down, doesn't it? It's that idea of slowly doing something reluctantly. You don't really want to be doing it. You hope it'll be over soon, but it's so unpleasant that you tend to slow down and drag it out because you're just bitter about having to do it. If you do things that you want to be doing, that you really enjoy, then you'll be really efficient at them. And that's why it's really important to choose a career path that you enjoy. So when you're setting your goals, try and find things that you like, or at least where a good part of it will be something that you really enjoy, because then you're going to be really efficient at it. Part of efficiency is enjoyment. That's natural, and that's how it should be. Treating yourself once you achieve something, that's going to make it more enjoyable. It's going to make it more efficient for you as well, because you'll want to get to that end point. But enjoyment isn't a simple thing. So what about the really hard tasks? Not so much that you're even reluctant to do them, it's just that they'll be hard, they'll be difficult, they're gonna involve maybe a lot more challenge than other tasks will. Something like having to do math or accounting or do your taxes or something like that. What you might find works really well with those things is to chop it up and do the hardest part first. If you know that you have 10 phone calls to make and one of them is going to be really difficult, really challenging, maybe that person is really hard to deal with, I recommend that you do the hardest first. And the reason for that is that the relief and accomplishment at having done that hardest part will actually propel you through the next 9 calls. Number 7 is not always a possibility, but it's something you're always going to want to keep at the back of your mind. Make sure you always value your time and delegate when possible. So this is something that you're maybe going to use more as you move on through your career, for example, but it can involve anything. Like, for example, if you have a ton of laundry, getting somebody to do that for you. For me, speaking personally, as I've moved on in my career, started some businesses, and my time is much more full, I find that hiring a cleaner to clean my apartment is a really good use of my money. Delegating doesn't always have to mean delegating to someone else, though. It can also mean delegating to yourself in those times where you're going to achieve absolutely nothing. When you're just really tired at the end of a week, you're not going to achieve any of your goals. Well, maybe if you've been putting off doing laundry, that's the time you should be doing it. So I told you earlier about how you often have these small chunks of time that are in between things that are otherwise wasted. Try and make those as productive as possible, but another tool you can use is to actually try and minimize them, because there's going to be a limit on how much you can really do while you're standing in line, while you're in between meetings. Another useful tool is to actually try and minimize them. So if you're scheduling your meeting, if you have some agency over that, you can try and schedule your meetings so they're all in the morning or all in the afternoon, so back to back, because you really don't probably need that much of a break between them. And so you just get from one one thing to the next, and then you're able to maximize the amount of time in terms of larger blocks that you have, that you can split up in more ways, that you have more playtime with. So that's something that you can do when you're scheduling yourself. It's an easy way to achieve your goals because it's something that you can always be mindful of when you're scheduling, when you're there with your calendar and somebody asks you when you want to meet. Try and stick that meeting behind another meeting and see then that you will be able to have larger chunks of time outside those meetings that is flexible time for you to achieve your goals with. Number 9 is also something that a lot of people don't do. And that is getting small, non-urgent, most often administrative tasks out of the way today. That's the key. Not tomorrow, not sometime this week and you keep pushing it back by one day. You just get them done today, right away. And that can be really hard if you've got all of these urgent, big tasks to deal with. But try and think about how many of those little tasks that you have that are constantly dragging you down and how that's making you feel mentally. Most likely with most people, those tiny tasks like writing a check or paying a bill or dealing with your online bank account, answering an email that you know you've kind of been meaning to answer but it's not really urgent, just get it done right now. And I know that that means delaying your next thing by another 5 minutes, but most likely at the back of your mind, your brain has been reminding you that you need to do that and using energy and using your time over just reminding you to do that. So if you just get it done, then you're gonna have that completely disappear from your life and you'll no longer need to spend time on pushing it back. We're afraid that we're not gonna finish something, that we're not gonna achieve our goal that day, then we're really never gonna get going because that fear will hold you back. So how do you deal with that? I think it's by setting manageable expectations. So it's all about how you're going to break down those tasks and also being kind to yourself. So if you realize that you are probably not going to finish this huge thing, like revising for a whole exam today, and you're kind to yourself and you set reasonable expectations, you're going to have a much more productive day than if you set unreasonable expectations. It's the idea that you shouldn't expect to finish because otherwise you probably won't start. Okay, so whenever you procrastinate, you just sit there and you get nothing done, try and look back and ask yourself why that was. I found most often it's because I didn't set myself a manageable goal. If my goal was so unrealistic, like for example, it was like revamping an entire exam for the contract law course I teach, that's like 100 questions, that's not something I'm going to be able to do in one evening after work. But if I set myself the goal that every day I'm going to go through 10 of those questions and look at them, read them, even just think about them, that's going to make them so much more manageable. And you'll find that that's when you occasionally surprise yourself and exceed your goals in one day. Maybe you're even already doing some of them, but I'm sharing them with you today because they actually have made a huge difference in my life, so I hope that they can do the same for you. If you'd like to see more of these types of motivational videos, then please let me know in the comments below so that I know you enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next installment. Bye!